New Orleans Saints, Philadelphia Eagles recap from what formerly was Pro Football Focus, now the 33rd team. Steve and Sam on the Check the Mic podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to hear what they have to say about the 15-12 game, the Rumble in the Superdome. Speaking of the Superdome, shout out to this fan who sent me a unbelievable photo of a naked glizzy. The Dome Dogs. The no condiment dome dog is making the rounds, and it is the ultimate sign of sacrifice you can make for the New Orleans Saints, or really any team. If you're a fan of any team and you're in a stadium and you want to put forth the effort that it takes to win a game, you got to knock down the condimentless dog. And now you may say, "Well, James, we lost." Yeah, but I have full faith that if this hombre right here didn't take this picture and force himself to eat this, then we probably lose this game 45-0. So he did what he could, for sure.
15, New Orleans Saints 12. 15-12 win for the Eagles. They move to 2-1. Saints fall to 2-1. Of all the game flows, this one surprised me. I thought we'd see a lot more offense. There was no scoring until, there was 3-0 for quite a while, into the fourth quarter.
Almost the entire game. And I agree with Steve here, is that I was surprised at the game flow, because I really thought, now granted, the injuries did change things, but we came into this game saying the Saints will have a tremendous amount of success running the football. We accepted that was going to happen. And the question was, will the Saints be able to stop Philly? Because we had a bad run defense last year. This is the first real rushing offense we saw this year. That was a definitive no. We weren't able to stop the run. Now, the Eric McCoy, Lucas Patrick situation, that it's hard to draw any conclusions of our ability to run the football, but I was surprised we didn't have more success against the Philadelphia Eagles defense. Vic Fangio with a beautiful blueprint on how to stymie the Saints team.
Quarter here. Saints were up 3-0. Fourth quarter, you get the Eagles finally get on the board with a Saquon Barkley 65-yard touchdown. Saints looked like they had made a nice fourth quarter comeback. It was 7-6. It was Derek Carr to Chris Olave to go up 12-7, under 5 minutes left, or right at the 2-minute mark. But then the Eagles came back, scored the game-winning touchdown, Saquon Barkley from 4 yards out to win it 15-12.
Strange game given what these teams had done heading into this game. The Eagles defense was able to, so remember last week, you're like, what a statement from the Saints. Their offense dominated Dallas. They were able to, but a big part of it was they were able to keep Dallas out of those obvious pass rushing situations where they could potentially win against that New Orleans offensive line. Like, they were running the ball like crazy. They were using play action off the back of that. And the number of snaps where Micah Parsons was able to pin his ears back and go after those guys was minimal. The Eagles defense was able to keep the Saints out of those plays where they were able to sort of keep out of those situations. So suddenly Jaylen Carter is absolutely destroying that offensive line because the Eagles have forced them into those difficult must-pass, non-play action-y type of situations. And suddenly we're starting to see some cracks materialize in that New Orleans offensive line. Like, it sort of showed how...
the biggest crack in the offensive line was the injury. It's hard, and that's kind of where it's difficult for me to draw a conclusion about this team, because I can't say... I don't think it's fair to say this is the offensive line that we thought we were getting, because no, it is not. No one thought the offensive line would not have Eric McCoy. No one thought the offensive line would have Lucas Patrick under center, or as center, I guess. So it's like, on one hand, yes, the offensive line was an enormous problem. On the other hand, it's not the offensive line. And if you told me we were going to be down Eric McCoy the rest of the season, I would not predict a whole lot of success for the Saints for the rest of the season. But I would hope that's not going to be the case.
I don't know how reliant they were on maybe positive game script or just being able to use all this play action and motion and blah, blah, blah. Suddenly, when you take those away and you force them to play the game a little bit more honestly, quote unquote, the man-for-man performance on that offensive line might be a little bit worse than we've seen.
Yeah, there's only so much time to really dive into it, but I watched the Eagles' defensive line. They were playing it wasn't like full bear fronts where you're covering up guards and center, both guards in the center, but they were really playing really tight on the defensive line.
Yeah.
Jaylen Carter, this was his best game in a long
he went nuts.
Long time. I mean, rushing the passer, yes, but his ability in the run game, because I called him out before the game. I said he's not playing well against the run. He's getting blocked through 2 weeks. He was getting blocked easily and just getting, not disrupting, getting knocked out of plays way too easily. He was completely disruptive here.
Yeah.
Knockback, resetting the line of scrimmage, penetrating. I mean, Jaylen Carter was back to form here, both run game and as a pass rusher. I thought that was huge for the Eagles, and that helped make the Saints. Like, the Saints kept trying to run the ball, but it wasn't nearly as effective. We're talking 1 week prior, they're moving Cowboys defensive tackles 7-8 yards off the ball, which might be just a common theme for the Cowboys.
Yep.
This is a question for you as a fan, or if you're a Saints fan. If not, this is a question just to ask. You have 3 data points, okay? Which of those data points do you believe to be true? Which do you believe not to be true? And if you believe them to be true but not all the way true, how far do you skew them? So, like Dallas, do you believe the Saints are closer to the team offensive line-wise, offensive scheme-wise? Or do you believe they are closer to that team? Or do you believe they are closer to the Eagles, the offensive line and the scheme that we saw against the Eagles? I would say both are the ends. I would say they're the polarizing ends of the spectrum, to where at the top end, the Saints are what they were against Dallas. At the bottom end, albeit you have to asterisk it with injury, at the bottom end, they are what they are against Philly. Okay. The median, more than likely, is in the middle somewhere. Question is, can it skew enough towards the Dallas game to where the Saints will have consistent success? That's the question. All right. None of the data points so far, I would say, are the tried and true for any team. It's 3 weeks into the season. Well, I mean, we're not going to draw it. If we were drawing conclusions at this point, Sam Darnold would be the MVP and Justin Fields would be right there behind him. So I'm not saying we draw full conclusions, but that right now, if you are tracking your data points and you are trying to accumulate as much information about these teams as possible, that's kind of the algorithm you're working with on a Monday morning.
And they're having no success whatsoever against the Eagles. So that right there brought the game back into this defensive battle where the Eagles played really stout up front and rushed the passer much better. And they did a nice job against the Saints offense that was cooking. Yeah. And then you talk about, look, Jalen Hurts throws another interception in the end zone. It wasn't as bad of a decision as I thought after rewatching it, but Tyrann Mathieu kind of wins at the catch point. He was kind of sitting on it, but it's another, turnover in the red zone. But they bounced back, man. No A.J. Brown in this game. Devontae Smith got smoked. He left with a concussion. You've got your top 2 receivers down. The Eagles aren't really built for receivers 3, 4, and 5 to make a ton of plays. They're hoping for those guys, but they're not established yet.
And they didn't. It was 2 people. It was Dallas Goedert and Saquon Barkley. I mean, you're talking about 147 yards from Saquon Barkley and 170 yards from Dallas Goedert. That was it. Like, once Smith went out, I mean, Smith had a good game until he went out. But good Lord, 170 yards on 10 targets, including the 61-yarder that sealed the game for Dallas Goedert. So, yeah, I mean, brutal showing.
Became a Dallas Goedert game, and Goedert had to step up. You're missing Lane Johnson. You're missing Mekhi Becton, 2 of your 5 starters on the offensive line. And Lane, we've seen the difference in the Eagles when they don't have Lane Johnson is completely different. So credit the Eagles, man, for finding a way here.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that too. Like, obviously we cover it from the Saints side and all that, but if you are an Eagles fan, you got to feel great about this. I mean, you're winning these games on the road, back against the wall after a bad after a bad finish to the Atlanta game. You're down a bunch of players, and you win this game. The Eagles are a really good team. I mean, last week in my power rankings, I think I had them 5. I dropped them. I even said during the power ranking show, like maybe I'm dropping them too much because of just the end of the game. The Eagles are a top 5, top 6 team in the NFL. Like, this is a team with Super Bowl aspirations. This is not the Broncos. This is not the Panthers. This is a really, really good team. and a team that knows how to win. I mean, a couple years removed from a Super Bowl. So, you know, the Eagles are what we thought they were, a Super Bowl contender, and the Saints aren't that far off from what we have learned to believe they are, which is a playoff team and an NFC contender here.
Yeah, particularly that last drive. I mean, they were down basically the right side of their offensive line. They don't have any receivers except Dallas Goedert left. And that last drive, they really did stand up and execute and get that win. That was pretty impressive for a team, given how depleted they were. The other thing in this game that you definitely highlighted before is you had said, you know, they are unsustainably productive right now in random deep shots to Rashid Shaheed, right?
Yeah.
And eventually those are going to stop working. Well, they stopped working hard in this game. Rashid Shaheed had 5 targets and 0 catches. He had 3 targets deep and 0 catches, 2 of which were catchable and contested and broken up. So that was a big part of, hey, where's this?
That is worth talking about. I mean, is Rashid a burner, or is he a true number 2? And if he's a burner, fine, but we do need, you know, that is one of those things that I think is still in flux a little bit. Like, is Sheed the guy where, you know, if he's going to burn deep, beat the safety, catch a wide open deep ball, cool. Asking him to make contested catches down the field, asking him to do all that, I don't know if he's that guy. Time will tell, but yeah, I mean, this was not a good game for the Rashid Shaheed faithful.
This New Orleans offense gone well. Previous 2 weeks, 2 out of those 3 deep targets were caught on average, right? That's the kind of pace they were setting. You catch 2 of those in this game, it's probably a completely different outcome. Like 2 of those bombs to Shaheed alone probably changes the outcome of this game.
Yeah, so look,
maybe just 1.
This was as much credit as I've given the Saints offensive line through 2 weeks. They got whooped in this one.
Yeah. No doubt.
Credit the Eagles defense. The other part, I'm not right on.
I mean, I'm not sure. Like, they haven't mentioned McCoy, you know, which makes me think that this is just a box score read, which is fine. They do these instant recaps, like, it's understandable. But to me, this looks like a box score read, because if you're not mentioning McCoy at all at this point, then, you know, I don't think you watch the game. And McCoy going out is an enormous thing.
On a lot of predictions, but Saquon Barkley and his effect on this offense, I mean, just another 65-yard run. I think my take on when Saquon Barkley got signed here is this is the place where if you give him a crease, he's going to create 50-yard plays.
Yeah, I was hand up. At this point so far, I was wrong on Saquon Barkley. I thought Saquon was overrated, but if healthy, I mean, he looks like the best running back in the NFL. So, you know, is he that big of an upgrade over like what we've seen DeAndre Swift do in Philadelphia? I don't know about all that, but right now Saquon is making much more of an impact in Philly than I thought he would.
Second 60-plus yard run now, or 50-plus yard run, 2 more touchdowns. But those are game changers in a game where the Eagles needed a different way to win offensively, and Barkley completely changes the game with a 65-yard touchdown.
And the other thing is the Saints' defense and special teams had been making a bunch of plays throughout this game just to keep this close. Like, people are going to look at this and say, wow, the Eagles' offense kind of stank, didn't get anything going. The Eagles weren't impressive, period. They should have been further ahead. Like,
oh, yeah.
The Saints had a blocked punt, you know, in this game. JT Gray, I think, blocked the punt. They held on 4th down. The Eagles showed the tush push and then ran like the counter off it, and the Saints defended it really well, stuffed that. Like, they had made a bunch of really impressive plays just to keep this tight and stop the Eagles from getting a significant lead and going ahead. But like, the Eagles were the team that were in the ascendancy, basically. I know they had to get a drive late and win the game, but like, they were the team that should have been ahead fairly comfortably, and it was the Saints clinging on with these series of high leverage plays.
No doubt about that. I mean, you talk about bend, don't break to the maximum. The Saints were poor defensively, except on the leverage plays, except on 4th downs, except in the red zone, except wherever, where, you know, we saw, I mean, the blocked punt, we saw the missed field goal, we saw the 4th down stops, we saw the turnovers in the red zone, like all of that. But beyond that, yeah, the box score tells me that the Eagles should have been up big in this game
to keep this close and keep this tight.
If the Saints would have won this game, this would have been the biggest fake box score of the week, for sure.
Yeah, the Eagles got stuffed on 4th down, right? And Then it felt like they're in a long field goal that got missed. We're going to punt. That gets blocked. I mean, there was a lot of – the Eagles have made a lot of mistakes through 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And their one really big mistake on Monday Night Football against the Falcons, or a couple big mistakes, game management and a Saquon Barkley drop. They're really close to being 3-0. I think at the end of the day, you might say, given the A.J. Brown injury, given the uneven play with Jalen Hurts, the turnovers, would you say the Eagles should be feeling good about they're not playing their best football, and they're 2-1, should be 3-0. They've got better football in them.
Yeah.
I think both teams should come out of, maybe not this game, but should come out of 3 weeks, and both teams should say, okay, we have the infrastructure here to win. Like, that's how I would feel for both teams. They have made enormous mistakes. I mean, the Saints in week 3 was nothing but mistakes, basically. The Eagles in week 2 and week 3 was nothing but mistakes. But both teams do have the infrastructure to be really good. That's how I would look at it. Now, if they keep playing how they are playing, yeah, you can't win at a high level making those kind of mistakes. Like, you can't win at a high level if you're the Eagles with the Jalen Hurts turnovers, with the block punts, with the mismanagement of situational, moments from Sirianni. Like, they can't sustain that. Saints, on the flip side, you can't win at a high level if this is your offense and this is your offensive line and that's how it's going to look, right? Like, you can't have this kind of offensive production and hope to win 15-12 games, or hope to win 12-7 games or 12-6 games or whatever. Like, that's not going to happen. So both teams, I think, have the infrastructure, but both teams need to clean stuff up if they want to really win at a high level. But,
the way the defense played right now, that was the best their defense played, I mean, in a year. I mean, like, in a long time, this is the best their defense has played.
I mean, their biggest concern is injuries. Like, A.J. Brown, I think, is...
Yeah, the front that played the unit that played the best this entire day was the Eagles' defense. The Eagles' defense was dominant. Saints' defense, not so much. Saints' offense, not so much. Eagles' offense, not so much. The defense, absolutely. This is the best the Eagles' defense has looked in a year and a half, since before last season. So that is the one unit that can come out of this game saying, we threw our A game. The Eagles' defense threw an A game.
Devontae Smith, as you say, got absolutely smoked in a hit that I think should probably be illegal based off the way the game is going.
It is kind of on the ref, though. Like, the ref has to blow that play dead. I'm not saying it wasn't a dirty hit or anything, but I'm saying that when the player is stood up like that, the ref has to blow that play.
Like, if a guy going over the middle is defenseless, then a guy being held up by multiple defenders for somebody to launch himself in from the side, helmet to helmet, also feels pretty defenseless.
Yeah.
So Lane Johnson left with a concussion. There was a report that he was vomiting on the sideline after the concussion. I don't know
not a good
much
look.
about concussion
Not a good look for Philly. I would assume him and Devontae Smith are both going to be out.
symptoms, but that sounds like a pretty bad one.
Yeah.
So they're pretty beat up at this point. So on one hand, yeah, we're 2-1, we're in a solid situation. On the other hand, you missed a lot of pretty key players right now, and getting those guys back is important.
And, of course, Ed Reed Blankenship.
Did you see him also giving the Ed Reed-esque the post-game speech in the locker room? Like, Ed Reed was always front and center giving the speech. Ed Reed Blankenship's in there doing it as well. He knows his responsibility.
He's going full Ed Reed here. So all in all, I'd say gutsy win for the Eagles. I mean, before the Dallas Goedert 60-yarder that set up their game-winning touchdown, just one of those unfortunate for the Saints, too. It looked like a busted coverage. They just ran across her. The two Saints defenders ran into each other, and Goddard's wide open. It was really bleak for the Eagles up to that point.
I mean, that is the sticking point that I just cannot get over. As bad as it was, as awful as the offensive line situation was, as awful as everything was, you are a busted coverage, like Xbox controller batteries die. You are that situation away from winning this game. 3rd and 16 at home. Give up 10 yards, whatever. And then you are in a 4th and 6, 4th and 7, 4th and 8, whatever it ends up being, to win the game against a team down all of its wide receivers with nothing but Dallas Goedert. Like, and a busted, even if you give up the first, like let's say you give up 17 yards right there, you're still in a great position. The only thing you can't do is give up a 60-yard pass. That's the only thing you can't do in that situation. That's the one thing that happened because of a busted coverage. It wasn't a deep pass that, a contested catch. It was a couple guys ran into each other on a giant football field. They end up at the exact same space at the exact same time. Yeah, I mean, it's just that is the sickening part, to where it's like, we can sit here and break down the McCoy injury. We can sit here and break down the play design, the play calling, all of that. But you are a couple of defensive backs running into each other away from somehow scratching and clawing your way to a win here.
Point. So I don't want to
and huge play,
overrate this both ways. Like, the Saints defense played really well too. They gave up 2 big plays, right? A 60-yarder to Goddard, 65-yarder to Saquon Barkley. Just giving up those 2 plays,
right?
Kind of offset a really good game by the Saints defense as well.
And credit to Goddard, because he'd been the guy that had almost fallen out of this offense for a while. Like, had become relatively anonymous, and when they needed him the most, by default, if nothing else, he really did stand up and have a huge game.
I think that's why it's so important to stack up playmakers.
Sure.
For depth, but also for game planning.
I also wanted to touch just for a second on Nick Sirianni's decision making.
Oof.
So they go for, we mentioned the 4th down they failed on where they got stuffed.
Sirianni's was crazy too. The 4th down before the half was nuts, because if you go there, you only have 1 timeout. So if you do get the first down, and they're obviously running like the tush push counter. So if you do get the first down, you probably got to blow the timeout. You have like 18 seconds left. So then you're going to take 1 shot at the end zone and then kick the field goal. So you are risking not getting points to take 1 shot in the end zone. Like, what is the percentage success rate for taking a shot in the end zone from that distance? I would say pretty low. And you're getting the ball to coming out of the second half. So you're passing up on a back-to-back to take 1 shot. You're risking all that to take 1 shot. That made absolutely no sense.
Where they showed tush push and then gave a kind of jet kind of handoff to Saquon Barkley going off the side of the thing, and it got stuffed. Whatever about that one. They went for a 4th down later and failed on it. It was, again, a long 4th and 1 or 4th and 2. This is the one, though. You know the way when people push back against analytics, they're like, well, the numbers can't tell you that our right guard is playing bad and it's snowy and all this kind of stuff, right? So on that play, like, Lane Johnson, the best right tackle in the game, arguably, is out with a concussion. Like, the right side of your offensive line is now missing, right? So what do? On the 4th and 2, you drop back pass, and your right tackle gets whooped for a sack, and you fail on 4th down. It's like, that was the cartoon play that people say that's when you overrule the numbers. And I'm not saying they should have. It's just Sirianni seems to be coming out on the wrong side of all those recently. Like, he's not doing what the number. He's like.
And when they did decide, they don't line up for a lot of field goals, the Eagles, relative to others.
Yeah, the 60-yarder too. Like, your defense at that point is dominating the game. Saints can do nothing on offense. So you line up for a field goal that virtually does nothing if you make it. But if you don't get it, you give the Saints half of the field. Like, that decision was really bad too.
Teams, when they do line up for a field goal, it's missed. When they do line up for a punt, it's blocked, right?
Let me explain this too. This is a really quick, like, how you can look at points and stuff. In general, the analytics skew away from kicking field goals because scoring is up and points are less valuable. Right now, scoring is down, especially in this game. Okay, in a 3-0 game. In the 4th quarter, points are so valuable. I mean, this is not rocket science. But if you have 100 donuts and you're selling donuts, those donuts are going to be cheaper per donut than if you have 10 donuts and you're selling donuts, because you have way more of them versus less of them. This is like, economics 101 here. So in a game with 3 points, with 10 points total, each point is so valuable. So to pass up on those points is exponentially worse than in a game that's 35-28 or 35-24, because there's so many more points. The game, this is a totally different game flow. So that's also kind of how you have to factor in like these decisions.
They don't because you're so used to them going for it. It's like, fine, kick team, let's get you out there, and bad stuff's happening right now.
Yeah. So it seems like he's just falling on the wrong side of all of those.
Yeah.
Like, here's when your coach
He's
should
guessing.
overrule the data type of thing.
He's on tilt.
Yeah. So look, I try not to show up on a Monday morning like if the Saints had won 12-7, would be like, oh, gutsy win by the Saints, right? I mean, like this one was close. It's really just a couple big plays that the Eagles made and the Saints didn't.
Last thing I wanted to mention.
I think that's a really good point. So same with Atlanta. We're in Atlanta and Philly with Saquon dropping the pass and Atlanta having the crazy comeback. Same with the Rams and the 49ers. A game like that, you have to really be careful that the result doesn't swing you. Like, how would you feel if the Saints would have won this game 12-7? You'd feel totally different, right? Don't let the result swing how you do, like how you break down a game. It should be relatively similar, which is why, I mean, obviously it feels bad. Like, obviously a loss feels bad. I'm not saying emotionally don't, but like I said earlier, I think both teams should come out of this saying we have the infrastructure to win. You know, like we have to clean some things up, but the pieces are there. And that's kind of how you should feel coming out of this game. It shouldn't be a doomer mentality of blow this up, fire Klint Kubiak. You know, like that's probably not the right way to do it. You shouldn't be, you know, you got to look at the game for what it is. You almost have to take the game and grade it, removing the last like 40 seconds of the game. You got to grade it first and then let the result happen or whatever and go from there.
The leader in the NFL in sacks through 3 weeks, Aiden Hutchinson, sacked the quarterback 7 times. Keon White is number 2, sacked the quarterback 5 times. You know number 3
Alontae Taylor, number 3.
Tied, admittedly.
Will
with
McDonald?
A few players. Yes, he's one of the players that's tied.
And who else now?
Cornerback Alontae Taylor for the New Orleans Saints got his 4th sack in this game.
Oh, he's at 4 now?
Yeah,
because he had 3 against Bryce Young.
Yeah.
They might not count
Saints
those.
are dialing him up really well. It's working a lot.
They might not count those Bryce Young ones.
Yeah, whatever. Point. They all count.
All right. Are we on? Oh, shoot. I wasn't ready for this.
Uh-oh.
I got it.
That's all the 1 p.m.s. Oh, look at this.
All right, there you go. Saints-Eagles breakdown from the former Pro Football Focus guys, now the 33rd team guys, Sam and Steve. Let me know in the comments below what you think. How are you feeling now that the dust has settled? Get on down in the comments. I'll see you in the next video.